Hello, welcome to episode 20 of the Snowboard Instructor podcast. This week we talk to Graham, who is a CASI Level 3 instructor and Park 1 evaluator. In this episode we listen to his rise and time in the CASI system and how he thought up and founded SnowboardTeacher.com, which is an online training tool helping people to become CASI instructors from all walks of life.
This episode is sponsored by Watch and Ride, an online snowboard school which helps improve your shredding. Visit Watch and Ride and use the code Snowboard Instructor Podcast to get 25% off your order. Thanks so much for listening and hope you enjoy the episode. I'm kind of go through the first questions in terms of your history. Like, where did you start off? How did you learn how to snowboard?
Okay, so how did I learn how to snowboard? We got to go way back here. I started in 1995, so I was 11 years old, and I grew up in Quebec, in Montreal. So my home hill was Mont Christie, which had 3 T-bars. And it was an amazing hill just north of Montreal because they didn't groom half of the hill, right? So it was just left to nature and got these pillows, berms would build up, all sorts of fun stuff. So as a family, we loved that. And in 1995, my folks bought me a snowboard. I came downstairs on Christmas morning and it was just sitting there against the fireplace, my unwrapped gift, and I walked down and it blew my mind. And I was in ski lessons at that point. So I would do ski lessons. And then right after the ski lesson, I would run up to my parents' car. I'd kick off my ski boots, I'd put on my Sorels, I'd strap into my new snowboard, my Black Snow Legend, which is a legendary snowboard. I don't know if you guys know that one. And I would point it down the hill and try to figure out how to turn. And, it took me an entire season to figure out how to turn this thing, how to make it go left, how to make it go right, because I didn't have lessons at that point, and I was dealing with my friends in my ski class who were laughing at me from the side saying, "What's he doing?" And then 2 years later, they were snowboarding. So I said, "Ha." It took me a full season to learn how to do that. And I didn't take my first lesson until a few years later, when my folks took us up to Mont Saint Anne, which is in Quebec, near Quebec City. And I got my first lesson and I knew how to turn at that point. And so my folks bought me a lesson. They were like, "Okay, here's our son, Graham. He's going to take a lesson with you." And the instructor looked at me and he said, "Okay, Graham, what do you want to learn?" And I said, "I want to learn the half pipe." And this smile just crept up on his face. He's like, "Yes, cool, a Graham that shreds." And so, he took me up the hill and Mont Saint Anne had a great half pipe. And so he taught me how to drop in. And, I was, how old was I? I was 14 at the time. So I don't remember a huge amount, but that was my one and only snowboard lesson. It was good. And then, life continued and snowboarding was a passion of mine. So through high school and my young teenage years, I just hang out with my buddies. And in Montreal, we're blessed with a long, long winter and something like 45 or 50 small ski hills within an hours and a half drive from Montreal. So every weekend we'd just drive up and hit these different hills. And during the week, we'd go to the local golf course. We'd go to the sides of the overpasses, over the highway and build jumps at the bottom of those. And just, I even built a landing in my front yard and jumped off my 2-story roof one day, just, living snowboarding as a kid and just getting it wherever I could. So those were sort of my formative years in snowboarding, and I see that that went all the way up until university too, and then the second part of my life was when I moved out west and sort of began my snowboarding career, I would say. But that's sort of the real formative years. We're in Montreal, and it was pretty amazing. And right after high school, I took a gap year, kind of like what a lot of people in Great Britain do, right? Because it's not super common in our part of the world. But my parents said, "Hey, go do a gap year, go do something before, right after high school to sort of celebrate." So I found a program called YWAM, Youth with a Mission, which was based out of Colorado. And this was amazing. It married two of my biggest passions at the time, which was snowboarding and my love for God. And this was like a Bible college that was based in Colorado, and they had a snowboard outreach program. So I went to Colorado for like 3 months and learned all about God and different aspects of spirituality and stuff, which was big in my life. And then we went to Alaska for 2 months.
Nice.
And snowboarded and used snowboarding as a bridge to like connect with people and just sort of tell them about our faith and all that stuff. But it blew my mind being able to go out west at that age, at the tender age of 18. So that was a cool sort of gap program that I did. Different, right?
Yeah, no, that's cool that you've got like, that's a thing that, they decide to use snowboarding as a anchor point to talk about God and that jazz. Like, that's cool.
I didn't even know those kind
new.
of courses.
Yeah.
I know. So get this, like, I mean, spirituality, it's like, it's this thing, right? That I believe that it's an aspect of life, and snowboarders and spirituality, that's a whole other podcast though, right? Like we can do that one later. There's even like books on Zen Buddhism and snowboarding and stuff like that that I've come across. Oh yeah. Trust me, there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down there.
I want to go down this rabbit hole now.
We'll do it later. Maybe for series 2, yeah.
So I came back from that amazing trip, and then it was time to start school. So between high school and university in Quebec, we've got something called CEGEP, which is a 2-year stepping stone between those two school systems, right? So during my CEGEP days, I got a night pass at the local hill, Saint Sever. I went up there 4 days a week with a buddy of mine, and we shredded park 4 nights a week after class, and so there you go. So the snowboarding just kept it was this driving line through my life since I started it back when I was 11 years old in 95. And then I went to university. And I finished my degree in geography at Carleton U. And my best memory of my university days was the Carleton University Ski and Snowboard Club, obviously, right? Every weekend we went up to Tremblant. So again, snowboarding, if you're passionate about something, you chase it, right? Around, you can drive your life towards it, but you can also just pepper it into your life as you build it, but make sure that it's always there. So I definitely did that. And then 2 days after I got my degree from Carleton, I packed my bags and went to Whistler. And I had been dreaming about going there since I was like 16 years old. I had been consuming snowboard media, Transworld Snowboarding, Snowboard Canada magazine, all the old videos. I used to have the VHS, videos, the forum videos, Mac Dog Productions, all that stuff. So I've just been stewing in snowboard culture. And so Whistler, it was written on the wall. I had to go there, and so there you go. 2 days after, I found myself in Whistler, and that was sort of the next chunk. I don't know if we want to go into that.
We can do. I do want to talk about quickly, like your kind of reaction experiences between kind of going from Quebec and being from those local slopes to kind of going to British Columbia and having different change in weather and different change in terrain. How did you find that? Like the first reaction you were kind of there for?
It blew my mind and it destroyed my body.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was nuts. There's like, East Coast is so good for building fundamentals, especially freestyle fundamentals, because they're small hills. And so what do you do with a small hill? You dig a half pipe, you build some jumps and some rails, and you get really, really good at freestyle. There's a reason that half of the Canadian national team is from Quebec, it just builds those really good fundamental skills. So then going out west, holy crap, that's a different kind of snowboarding. So my friend Alana, who was living there, she took me onto Blackcomb for one full day, like a 6-hour day riding. The next day we rode Whistler for 6 hours, and I literally thought I had like broken both of my ankles because they were in so much pain at the end of that day. My body was wrecked. It took me a solid week to get back into shape. And I was a young man at like 24 years old at that point. So, but it just completely wrecked me. And part of going to Whistler was I had a job going there, right? Like I organized a job. Whistler Blackcomb did a hiring tour. They came through Montreal. I interviewed, I got offered a job, and part of the stipulation was that I do my CASI level 2 upon arriving in Whistler.
Oh, grand, yeah, because you didn't really have the level 1 when it kind of started off. Was it just straight into 2? Yeah.
No, you know what? I did my level 1 back at Mont Saint-Sever in Quebec in the year 2000. So right when I graduated high school at 16 years old.
Nice. So if we kind of go back to when you did the level 1 in high school, what was your first thoughts of kind of wanting to do the qualification, and kind of what was kind of stemming in your head from that?
So now we got to go back to the mind of a 16-year-old
yeah.
too, right? So I was just frothing and snowboarding left, right, and center wherever I could. I didn't do level 1 with a career goal in mind. I did level 1 because it was more snowboarding. It was cool. It was the chance to be coached. And I was a kid who had one lesson when he was like, 13, 14 years old. And so CASI 1 came up, and I was like, ooh, cool, a snowboarding lesson, and I can get a certification out of it. Let's go do this. And so, yeah, so there you go. So that's why I went and did my level 1 back in 2000. My career didn't start until, 2007, end of 2007. So there was a period in the middle where I had one job in CEGEP. I did night school for 1 year. I took one job at Bromont, which is about 40 minutes outside of Montreal. And that was an interesting experience. I think I was probably like 19 years old at that point.
Oh, no way. That's sick.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
And did you just kind of quickly, before we move on, with the level 1 course, how did you kind of find that course overall with the coach? And just kind of want to go a bit more detail with, if you can remember, of course, like who your instructor was, and just the criteria that was along that, and how did you kind of find that?
So I'll be honest with you, it's really hard to remember. Back then, 16 years ago, we're talking like 21 years ago. Honestly, sorry, I can't really remember a whole lot about CASI level 1. As soon as we get on to the other ones, like 2 and 3 and that whole, yeah, because that's kind of like in my mind, like that's where snowboarding as a profession began. That's it. That's where it kind of began. So I've got like the formative years, and CASI 1 was wrapped in there. It was there, but it's more of a lesson than anything. I think that the teacher, probably the evaluator,
was just like, sound. Just have
too much, man. Sorry.
That's all good. Don't worry about it. Let's move on to Whistler then. I just want to quickly talk about, like, did you have like favorite runs at Whistler when you were kind of there for the season? And like, how was the community like back then, and what did you kind of think of it?
Yeah, so I mean, Whistler's massive. It's got something like over 200 runs between the two mountains, right? So there's definitely, you do get your favorites, for sure. And the community was absolutely incredible, and that's part of what has had me stay there for the past like 13 years. Is the professional community that surrounds snowboarding out there. It's nuts. When I first got there in 2007, and I did my CASI 2, my evaluator, Yuki, she completely broke down my snowboarding. I met my buddy Felix in that course. It was also from Quebec, and the two of us got our butts kicked from that mountain. It just completely thrashed us. We had no idea how to ride that kind of powder, those kind of bumps, because we don't have that in Quebec. But Yuki, she broke our snowboarding down to the very basics and rebuilt us in a West Coast CASI style, and it gave us all the tools that we needed to be able to handle that kind of terrain. And between Felix and I, we would study every single night together, and to make sure that we passed the teaching portion of it, and ended up passing with above standard when we used to give above standards on the teaching. So I was really stoked about that with my level 2. And from there, that it was incredible. Whistler's got this training culture built into the company, right? We've got a huge amount of level 4s and 3s, and an entire training department that gives us sessions that we can go on when we don't have work for the day, or we have a day off or something like that. And the sessions will either be CASI focused, or they'll be, focused on park or on steep trees and drops, or on carving, or on all these different super fun aspects of snowboarding. So as a growing snowboarder and a growing snowboard instructor, it was a greenhouse of evolution, professional evolution in that resort. So yeah, nothing but good things to say about the training programs there.
And kind of, if you can give us like any examples on how your riding changed from that, and what like your trainer kind of saw from your riding back from Quebec to of course how it is now, and that development more of in detail, if that's all right, Graham.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the things probably was when you haven't had a lesson and you know how to snowboard, and then you get in front of a coach, all those bad habits that you didn't know you have get highlighted in terms of how you're standing on your snowboard, if you're aligned, if you're counter rotated, how you're dealing with the pressure created by the terrain and whatnot. And you don't have any idea of what you're doing until someone tells you about technique. So those were some of the big things I think that I had to deal with. It was probably mostly how to manage the pressure created by terrain, because the terrain was so different in the West as to what it was in the East. So that, specifically it was more, probably had to do a lot with just how to ride that kind of terrain, how to manage the pressure, make sure you don't fall over. I
agree with that, because it's like, we come from dome riding, which is sort of a similar sort of style where, in Britain, because we don't have slopes and we're very flat, we have like these indoor snow centres, and there's like a bunch of them all around the UK. And the only thing you can really do on them is park riding and stuff. So the whole carving and all terrain, you can do it, but it's very, very difficult to try and set something up about it. So when you go on to when I went to do my level 2, down in Avonsell last season, it was just basically the same thing, managing pressure of all the terrain and like trying to deal with the bumps and be like, okay, I need to do this to do this. That sort of makes sense. And the coach going, no, you got too much weight on your front foot, get it on your back, or that's why you keep bloody falling over. So yeah, I agree with that sort of stuff, where it's just like dealing with it, and it's just time on the mountain and time on the slope.
It's incredible, this diversity of our sport. You might be able to press through a double kink, but not be able to ride a mogul field, or vice versa, right? And it's so fun about our sport, and trying to round off all those different aspects so that you can become this beautiful whole snowboarder. It's a fun thing to chase.
Definitely. So you've just got your level 2. Where did you go after that? Did you kind of really start chasing for the higher qualifications, or did you go straight into teaching? You were like, I've got my qualification, I can be an instructor.
Well, I mean, with I had my job, right? Like I had my job at Whistler Blackcomb. I started working in the school's business unit. So that means like bus loads. We had sometimes 600 kids that would come up on a Saturday, and we'd have to deal with those classes. And you could have a group of 4 students or a group of 12 students sometimes if it got really, really crazy, and you had to deal with them. With a level 2, it was teaching up to kind of intermediate levels. So a lot of beginners, a lot of, introduction to snowboarding, but it taught me so much about class management, how to deal with the split that happens naturally in any class, where in any group class where you'll have some people progress really fast and others need to take a little bit more time, and how do you deal with that? So professionally, it was really, really good to train me into, how you deal with the realities of snowboard instructing with groups. So I did that for a few years. I stayed with that business unit for a few years, but that first year, that 2008 season, 07-08, when I got my level 2, was a big season. First time out West, first time actually dealing with like huge classes like that. I met the woman that I fell in love with and later married that season. And at the end of that 07-08 season, I went back to Montreal. I worked a little bit, and then I took a Greyhound bus across our country to go back to Whistler, which is a 3.5-day bus ride, just to let you know. I went to the Camp of Champions, which had been on my bucket list. I don't know if you guys know the Camp of Champions. It's a pretty, it's a legendary summer camp founded by Ken Achenbach. And it was in all those videos, all those magazines that I had ingested when I was a kid. All the pros would go there, and you could pay for access to the park, or you could pay for access to the park with coaching from these pros. And I remember getting there and walking into the Camp of Champions office and being like, I just took a bus for 3.5 days to get here, guys. I'm stoked. And I remember Ken Achenbach looked at me and he's like, this guy's my hero, man. And I was just because of snowboarding, it just drives you. It just, when something's a passion, you will take a bus for 3.5 days, and eat junk food just to get there, just to pull yourself together. So I did that for a week in Whistler, went back to Montreal on the bus again. And then my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, she flew back from France and met me in Montreal, and we flew down to Chile to go chase the snow. For that season, we spent about 2 months, I think, down in Chile, riding at the zone just near Santiago, which is the capital. So you drive up to Farellones, and there's 3 different resorts up there, and we shredded Chile for the first time, and it was just absolutely incredible. So that was the tail end of that 07-08 season. After that, boom, we flew back to Whistler and got into a house with Claire, with Felix, with a bunch of our buddies, and that was the beginning of the second year in Whistler. So yeah, snow life was on and living, really hard as soon as I got there.
What was Chile like compared to all the other mountains that you ridden?
Well, a lot higher altitude. I'll tell you what, I remember getting up the chairlift with Claire and leaning over just to strap up my bindings, click, 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 and then standing back up and completely losing my balance. My head was spinning, faster than the earth. It just, I completely out because of the altitude. I had no idea that was going to happen to me. I'd never been in high altitude before. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like that.
With the Alps is very high altitude anyway, so you sort of you get sort of used to it. But I don't know if I've experienced that sort of like high sensation. I'm going to say yes, because airplanes.
Mainly like probably feeling a bit queasy on the gondola or something like that.
On the chairlift up, you're feeling a bit like, I'm not feeling it. And then you start riding and you sort of get sort of that thing out of you. So, yeah. So
that was really dope. Anyway, so we got down there and our friends took us on a hike right away, and hiking at 3,000 meters, we lost our breath right away as well, and that was our first day there. Just riding around Chile, different kind of resort, a lot of different kinds of mountains. The rocks were quite sharp there, we found, so that like if ever you went off of the groomed runs, you had to be quite careful of rocks. They weren't rounded over or anything. They were like little shark fins that, there was a couple core shots within our crew that we had to repair at the end of the day. So that was interesting to notice. But Chile, I love, and some of the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen living up at that altitude. So I recommend it to anybody to get down to the Southern Hemisphere. It's a gorgeous experience. Yeah. And it wasn't our last time going there too. We loved it so much that we went back in 2013 as well, a few years later. But at that point, so that was in 2008, just after getting the CASI 2, and then following season 2009, yes, I did chase CASI 3. My wife and I, we chased that one together, and that was, we can talk about CASI 3. It was tough.
Yeah,
it was a good one. Yeah.
That you very underlined the tough there.
It was, I had to work hard at it.
Yeah, it must have been a massive jump though. Like, did you feel prepared when going into it? I'm guessing did you speak to a couple of people who maybe done the level 3 before and you just had a sense of it, so you had an idea? Like how basically just how prepared were you kind of going into level 3 in your eyes, and
I mean, I felt pretty prepared. I feel, part of Whistler, again, is that training culture, right? Like I was blessed with some amazing coaches there they helped prepare us, riding wise and teaching wise for this course. So I wasn't going in blind. And one thing that I've always found is fundamental in a course, like for my level 2, I studied every night with Felix. Level 3, I studied every night with Claire. I had my buddy, we always have having a study buddy, someone to bounce ideas off and to hash through the details with, I think for me been one of the key things for having success in these courses. I mean, you can prepare as much as you want, and then exam day is exam day. And I remember I got one little fun story about exam day. I was riding with our crew, and it was time for the ride off, right? We're in Whistler on Blackcomb Glacier. And Chucky was one of the evaluators, and I remember standing on top of this black diamond mogul field, nice and steep, and this was our ride off. And Chucky looks at us and says, "Now remember, guys, you can do anything you put your mind to on a snowboard." And he proceeds to backflip into the mogul field and shred it harder than I'd ever seen in my life. It blew my mind. He gets to the bottom and he looks back up at us with the other evaluators, and all of us have our jaws just like wide open, like, oh my gosh. And slightly above the course standards, the riding standards, I got to say, but his idea was to motivate us, and it certainly did that. And all of us got pumped up, and went and did our best down that mogul field. And lots of good vibes, but definitely, talking with the other candidates during the course, having your study buddy, those for me are some of the big tools for success.
I'm guessing you met a lot of friends as well on that course, and just I'm guessing you keep in touch with now and again just to see if you might go over to their kind of resort or something. Or I'm guessing most of them kind of stay in Whistler after they did their level 3, or did they kind of venture off?
A lot of folks stay in Whistler because it's got, our community is tight there. I mean, snow school and the social community are quite overlapping. And so a lot of those buddies that I did level 3 with are still in Whistler today and are still working for that snow school and training newer instructors that are coming in and continuing their careers there. So a lot of them have stayed there.
Nice. And how did you find your tech and teach and your pedagogy and those kind of modules itself? If we can go a bit more detail. How you felt with that.
So teaching was a bit to get my head around, in terms of what, why, how, and when, and then those subcomponents, kind of just trying to get those all straight in my mind. And certainly with retrospect, things are a lot more clearer now as you evolve as a teacher. You look back and you say, oh yeah, it all makes logical sense. But when something is brand new to you, these new concepts, it takes a little while to wrap your head around it. So pedagogy was probably the most straightforward. I think that was described in another podcast episode you guys did, but that whole pedagogy sandwich thing, that's pretty straightforward. The teaching itself, that took the work, I found, to try to get those lessons straight. So writing things out really, really helped. In the little place where Claire and I were living, we had stacks of paper, stacks of lessons, of all these different scenarios, all the different subcomponents, and what our goals were, just so we could be prepared for whatever the scenario the evaluator asked us to teach. But the teaching was it was a bit of a challenge. In fact, actually, no, I did pass it on the first go. I was just gonna say, I don't think I got that, but no, I did pass that. And riding was that was a step up as well, especially for a East Coast kid. It was only year number 2 in Whistler riding these big mountains, so it had learned some skills, but level 3 was a step up as well. Really using those joints independently as you roll down a mogul field, and knowing how to use that up unweighting to be able to make sure that when you're turning, there's not much pressure on that snowboard itself, right? So all these kind of new riding techniques were something to handle and to get my head around. So it's a challenging course, but holy crow, did it ever make me a better teacher and a better rider. It was totally worth it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm guessing you had like celebratory drinks at the end of everything, and just I get it. Of course, man, for sure. Yeah, that's part of the deal for sure. And often, the evaluators came out with us too, because they're stoked, just like any snowboard instructor is stoked when their student does their first turn or does their first 180. Your evaluators are stoked when you pass. They're like, yeah, you got it, man. You can take this next step in your career. And there's something about transmission too, like when you're teaching, when you know that what you've taught has an impact on that person's life, it's super fulfilling, and it just fills you with joy too, right? So drinks were definitely part of it. And I actually want to just quickly ask us, like, how did your other half get along with the level 3s and whatnot?
Oh man, she killed it. She passed it on the first go. She's got this eye. She's got one of these analytical eyes that are just it's unparalleled, So it's no doubt. She crushed it. She crushed it. Super proud of her. Yeah.
And just to kind of confirm, she was doing skiing, or was she with CASI?
No, she's a shredder. She's a snowboarder. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool.
Through and through. It's really fun actually, because she grew up in Europe and I grew up in Quebec. So I had strong freestyle roots and she had stronger free ride roots. So it was really interesting when we came together, because she could definitely show me a thing or two about this big mountain and how to, look at lines and deal with different terrain. And when it came to doing freestyle, that was where I could help her out. So it was a really neat combo to come together. We completed each other pretty well.
Oh, that's so cool. That's such a really cool. But after level 3, what was the mindset there, Graham, and what?
Well, after level 3, that in terms of what my job was, I was working for the school groups, right? That business unit. And then in the busy time, so at Christmas time, what they would do is they would flip us into another business unit that needed more staff. They would close down schools. And so I got flipped into private lessons and realized pretty quickly that fit me well, that I really like privates. And so that same year that I got my level 3, I moved over into the private lessons business unit full time. And it was pretty amazing being able to have, just one-on-one clients or small groups for max and you could really give them the best of, what you wanted to give them. And when I first got into that business, one of the first lessons I was given was this young guy who was probably like 13 or 14 at the time. And I ended up teaching him every year for about 9 years, I think. He turned the age that I was when I started teaching him, like a few years ago. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense, yeah.
So part of the beautiful thing with private lessons is that we could build these long relationships with clients. And in fact, we were encouraged to do that so that, everybody's a winner, right? The resort is happy when that client comes back, and the client's happy when they can have Graham, they can have their instructor, and Graham's happy too, because it's a fun relationship. It's really nice to see this guy every year. And so that first year that I went there, there was a contest on where whoever flipped the most lessons during the Christmas period, which means turning a half-day lesson into a full-day lesson, won a heli trip.
Nice.
Guess who won?
You.
Oh yeah, I got my first heli trip at the end of that season. So that was nutty, man. That was just like, okay, privates, yes, sign me up full time. I'm in on this thing. So that was my first heli trip. Wasn't the last heli trip that I've been able to enjoy through my job either. And that's, yeah, it's one of the beautiful perks about teaching in privates. And so I've been there, up until today too. And that's still where I run my business within Whistler Blackcomb's business.
How did you find that, quickly, how did you find that heli trip?
Oh my God, man, heli, it's amazing. They are one of the most coolest pieces of technology that humans have ever invented. And you go up there. One of the most amazing things is when you hop out of the bird and it flies away, and then all of a sudden you're just on the top of this gorgeous mountain in the backcountry with no other sounds, no other people except for your little group around, and it makes you feel small, which is really cool. It's cool to get into big mountains and feel small. Heli trips, man. If you can afford it, go for it. If you can't, figure out a way, become an instructor, and figure your way into them. And then also other opportunities are like cat skiing, which we do quite a bit out in the West Coast as well. And I've had opportunities to do that, which frankly is amazing as well. I put it pretty much on par with heli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. And did you kind of go from, after doing the private lessons and really kind of thinking about it, is that where Snowboard Teacher really started to kind of communicate in your head in terms of the business itself? Or
you know what, Snowboard Teacher, no, that came a little bit later, because during my times in privates, it was more about snowboard instructing as a career, right? So just focusing on getting myself through my levels, and then starting in about 2012, I started to get interested in evaluating. And so I got my CASI level 1 evaluators. A couple of years later, became a CASI 2 evaluator, and then a few years later, Park 1. And so that's been another chapter of my snowboarding career, is getting into instructor training and delivering courses for CASI. Snowboard Teacher came about a little while later, and that one's interesting because I discovered it as a way to marry my snowboarding career with my alternate career. So in 2011, when I was, I don't know, what was that? It was a few years after getting to Whistler, I decided that I needed another career that didn't involve my body in the same way that snowboarding does. So I went ahead and did a Cambridge certificate in English language teaching to adults. And so for the past 10 years, I've had that as an alternate career, as a parallel career, let's say, to snowboarding. So teaching, folks who would come into Whistler and want to ride the bike park and learn language and get prepared to enter into English speaking universities and helping them. And so I figured out that teaching is teaching is teaching. And just as much as I love teaching snowboarding, it was really cool to teach language. And same thing, you teach someone something new, you get stoked. You feel that, fulfillment of helping them achieve their goals. And so the idea of Snowboard Teacher, to bring it back around to that, is I noticed that through my evaluating career, I noticed that we had in Whistler, we've got a bit of quite a few international folk that come in, a lot of Japanese, some people from China who come in to take the instructor exams, and maybe they've flown over from those places too, right? Like it's a big deal to come and take the exam, and they had their riding. You could tell that they knew the stuff, but they couldn't communicate it. there was something that was lacking in their communication in terms of, that's one of the boxes we got to tick on the evaluation form is, can you communicate clearly? And if you can't get this certification. So I realized that we were having to, certain candidates were missing this component to get their certs. And I said, shoot, these guys need some support. So I married my skills as an English language teacher and my skills as a snowboarding evaluator, and put 2 and 2 together and built Snowboard Teacher originally for these ESL, English as a second language students. That's where the original idea came from. Mm-hmm.
So how were you with kind of different types of languages? Were you quite adverse originally when you kind of started off? I'm guessing you learned a lot of French through your other half, and maybe certain, I'm guessing, was it a mandatory language in Quebec when you were going through your just normal education?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, speaking French is really important in Quebec, and it's a beautiful way to understand that Quebecois culture, which is unique in Canada, and very, rich and so cool to be able to access. And language really is a key, is a bridge to another culture. So I was blessed to go all the way through my primary education in French, even preschool in French. So it put it up there in my brain, which was great. And then moving out to Whistler, for some reason, I was really attracted to the French-speaking community. And my wife today, she was part of that crew that I was attracted to. And so, so second language has always been there. And then we've got a lot of colleagues from around the world in the Whistler Blackcomb Snow School as well, from Argentina, from Croatia, from different places. So there's always lots of language going around left, right, and center. And language it's a really fun world to explore for sure.
Cool. I do want to quickly, before we really move on to Snowboard Teacher, just kind of quickly going through those other qualifications with being an evaluator and the Park 1 and whatnot, and just, kind of going through that, if that's all right, Graham.
Yeah, no doubt. So CASI 1, it's giving CASI courses is absolutely fun, because you can finally impart all that experience that you've gained to new instructors, and making sure that those who are going to be wearing the same jacket as you are, represented properly, and that they're doing their job well. So it helped me a lot to understand my own snowboarding instructing as well, to become a CASI 1 and 2 and then Park 1 eval. When you have to deliver a course, part of the goal is simplicity and copyability, right? So that someone can listen to what you say and it is clear. And that translates into your own lessons that you give. And my gosh, do they ever become efficient once you really put the time into studying them and filtering them down into the most simplest words, right? CASI, I was super, super stoked to get my Park 1 eval, to get signed off on that, because, Park is, for me, at the core of the sport, in my definition of snowboarding. And so it was really, really fun to be able to coach people a lot on those courses. And the Park 1 course is definitely, since it used to be a component of CASI 3, right? And that was how you could get your Park cert, was through that course itself or the standalone course. But now that they've sort of packaged it off into its own little thing, and rewritten the course, it's really well done. It's what I like about it is it ensures a certain standard of safety in park riding that is necessary, and it's a safe stepping stone before level 3. We used to have folks coming on to level 3 and maybe they didn't have a whole lot of park experience, and they would come on to 3 and just like huck themselves and try really, really hard to hit the freestyle components to make sure they could pass the course, but maybe it was above their head, so there is some injuries that were coming out of it and some things like that. So the fact that they've made it a mandatory stepping stone before CASI 3, I think is really, really smart in terms of safety for the candidates and just making sure those basic freestyle maneuvers are there. Yeah.
Are you ever going to do the new park 2 at all, or is that?
Oh, definitely, man. If that's it don't, as far to my knowledge, I don't think that it's out yet, and I think it's in development. But as soon as it's there, for sure, man. Park is, heck yeah. I gotta follow that. As long as my knees can follow, I'm going, man.
Mate, I can't wait to see on Instagram, like just you, when the first story of like, oh yeah, the new park level 2 course, first course, and there's just you going like, yeah, I'm at it.
There you go. I'll share my stoke, man, for sure. But yeah, I say, like, as long as the knees can follow, and I say that from experience. Like, what was it? I got my CASI eval 2 in 2014, and promptly at the end of that season, I went off a big jump, too big, way too big. I went off the jump, and then you look down and you say, there's the landing, and I'm still going up in the air. Crap.
So you just overshot it.
Completely. And thank goodness I had a full season's worth of strength in my legs, but I landed, twisted funny, and I heard a rope snap in my knee, and boom, there goes the ACL. So that was the end of that season and the end of the following season, the 2015 season. I decided to take a full year to recover, and thank goodness I had that English as a second language teaching certificate to have that parallel career. I could lean on that when the body needed rest, so I encourage folks to do that too. It's not a bad idea to have a backup plan that doesn't involve your body.
I just presume by technology growth, we're going to be having cyber knees by the end of it, and we won't have that problem in the next 10 years.
I like that. Okay, very cool.
That'd be cool though.
Yeah, man.
I just want to get back into the park thing. What was the sort of criteria for it, for like the park 1 and then the park 2? So what sort of stuff did you need to do to obviously pass it and stuff?
Sure. So park 1, now we don't have the park 2 out just yet. That's going to be coming soon. But park 1 criteria, we got some mandatory maneuvers. You got to be able to do jumping, some flatland, and some box stuff. So when we come to the box stuff, you got to be able to do 50-50 with a variation. So that could be a nose press or a board slide. And the key here is consistently. And that's one of the big words that's in the course guide, is that these maneuvers need to be done consistently, which means that if you're coming on the course to learn the maneuvers, that's cool because we're there to coach you. But you're not necessarily going to have success through the course if you're learning them and then falling and learning and falling, because falling is part of learning, right? So we are looking for consistency. And so that's one of the big things that kind of throws people off when they come into the course. But I mean, getting coaching, we're there for that too. It's so cool. We help people get better because we're passionate about it, and that's part of our job, So that's the box riding. You got to be able to do some flatland, nose press, tail press, with rotation, with a bit of a what do we call it? Variation. And then with airs, airs with a variation, and those must include 180s in both directions. A variation could be a grab or a shifty or something to make it look good, But yeah, lots of folks have trouble with the jumping as well. It's very interesting how we really have to go back to, I found in my experience that I have to go back to the basics of how to stand on a snowboard when you're taking a jump. Because a lot of folks are very, very even-footed, like 50-50 pressure on both feet. And sure, you can coast off a jump that way, but to coast off a jump and to get that spring, that better sense of control and a better position for landing, just bringing that weight just slightly back onto that back foot. I'm talking like 65% maybe of weight on that back foot, and just sitting there in a solid, freestyle position, but centered a bit more over that back foot. All of a sudden, people's airs look and feel a lot more comfortable when they do that. So a lot of folks don't know that. And through Snowboard Teacher, I've coached people in their riding as well, with the online coaching sessions, and have given them just that, stand up in front of the camera and show them the positioning, and they take that into the park with them. And I've gotten some great feedback from folks, lots of folks saying, oh my gosh, that little tip, that was a big one. So there's a little tip for all those snowboarders out there listening. Just center a little bit more on that back foot when you're taking off, not leaning back, but just center it a little bit more over that back foot, Yeah, so does that answer the question for what Park 1 is all about?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
very much.
that is a great segue into Snowboard Teacher anyway. Going into that. We've talked about the origins of that. When did you really start to really think about Snowboard Teacher as a whole, of where it is today?
So yeah, when we look back, the first motivations were those ESL students that were, being unsuccessful in their courses. But then as I was building this thing, I kind of realized that, wait a minute, this is useful for everyone, regardless of your first language. There's roughly 225 snow schools in Canada alone, and there's really about 25 GAP programs, these instructor training programs. So 225 snow schools, 25 GAP programs. That means that there's a lot of folks out there that don't necessarily have an instructor training structure around them, right? And so I realized that Snowboard Teacher could be their tool. So it's very useful for folks. So a lot of the folks who have come to Snowboard Teacher are super stoked to have found this, because they were lacking the training structure to help them prepare for their next course. And it's also useful for folks that are in a training structure too. I've got, it's added value. I've got 2 snowboard camps based out of Whistler that I'm working with, that were stoked when I said, hey, I've got this, tutorial series that I built, this self-studies series that is built directly for your students to help them prepare for their next CASI exam. They said, heck yeah, we're gonna definitely promote this to our students. So they were stoked. So it really is designed to work hand in hand with these training programs that are already there. It's not an on-snow training program. That is an amazing thing for any candidate preparing, is to prepare on snow. But then when you get home, open up Snowboard Teacher and you can check out everything that you're going to see on that course before actually stepping into the course. So it's super useful. And then of course the online coaching sessions that we offer too are very valuable for people just to practice delivering their teaching presentations they need, asking any questions that they need to before stepping in. So they're not stepping in blind to these courses. I know from experience that people who prepare before coming to a course do better. I've seen it over the years, no doubt that you can tell who's prepared and you can tell who's not. So Snowboard Teacher is a tool for everyone.
That's so good. And let's go into a bit more detail with the courses itself, actually, and what courses you provide there, specifically from level 1 to level 3. And of course, specifically, those language kind of courses and what's kind of involved in them.
Yeah. So, right now we've got the self-study programs, which are video tutorial series of everything you're going to see on that CASI course. So we've got level 1, we've got a full level 2 course that launched this year, and we've got a level 1 ESL specific, English as a second language. So those 3 study programs, you can do at your own pace. And the ESL, what the sort of specifics of that is that I've written out basically the transcript of what I go through in the videos. And through this transcript, there's hyperlinks that will link over to a language reference. And in the language reference, it's got all sorts of explanations of that English language, of the sentences, how we construct sentences, what the different prepositions are, how we use the adverbs, all that kind of fun language stuff that we take for granted as first language speakers, but it's there along with key sentences, key words that are useful in each step of delivering those presentations. And we've also got some common questions that these candidates will hear on course from their evaluators, just so that they can be prepared as much as they can. So that's built out for level 1 right now. And going into the future, I'm going to build those out for all the CASI courses. Currently level 1, level 2, and level 1 ESL, and online coaching for all of the CASI courses, though, for Park 1 included, level 3, and even level 4. Through my 13 years in the industry, I've got a heck of a network, amazing trainers that I've been able to come in contact with. And that's the network that I'm pulling together for Snowboard Teacher. So yeah, we've got you covered. Any question you got about your next CASI course?
Hey, and I did see you kind of put in quickly those blog posts on just by the side. I know there's only 2 at the moment, but the one that really caught my eye, which is the one you kind of sent me, was the speak and switch one. I really loved how you've tied that with all the existing kind of methods and that are currently in the CASI manual, and how you've kind of interpreted that in your own way to kind of speak and switch, and kind of going off that. Do you mind just going into a bit more detail on speak and switch as a general overview? We'll probably link the actual blog post in the bio as it is, but just for like people who kind of want to quickly know about it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's really fun actually to see what the parallels are between learning snowboarding and learning a language. Just like in learning snowboarding, if when we learn a new skill, like let's say we're going to learn how to ollie for the first time, you have to be exposed to it first, right? And we go through the skill acquisition model, the initiation, acquisition, consolidation, refinement, and then creating variation. So when you see an ollie for the first time, you're being initiated to it. You start practicing it on the flat. You're acquiring this ollie, and then eventually getting to create a variation where you're ollieing off the second story of your home, right? And same thing with language. Let's say you hear a term for the first time, very simple, a term like cool. That's cool, right? If that's the first time you heard that term, you've got to, internalize that. You've got to acquire that, start to use it and say, okay, wait a minute. They use this word cool to talk about the weather, but also about what that person's snowboard looks like. How does that work? And you have to kind of, navigate how language works. You have to consolidate it. You have to try it. And then eventually you're comfortable enough with that new skill, that new word, that you start to create that variation. You can talk about how cool, something is in your own life. And so just that way that we acquire new things, I found was super interesting. That was just one of them. There's so many parallels. One of the other ones that I thought was super duper cool was was at the skill levels. We've got beginner snowboarders, we got intermediate, advanced and expert snowboarders, right? Those are our skill levels. Well, in language learning, we've got the same thing, right? We've got a beginner. Are you guys a beginner in any language?
I'm starting to learn Spanish.
Boom.
So getting that.
There you go. So you're okay. So you're this maybe what we call an A1, right? There's this whole they're called CEFR levels, the Common European Framework of Reference. It's basically how we decide where a person is in their language learning. So maybe you're an A1, which means that you're able to be familiar with some basic words, right? Or some basic phrases about your family or about things like that. So, and then once you can start to understand a wider variety of those basic phrases and languages, you've maybe moved into A2. And how can we decide what level you're in? Well, we do it kind of like with the competencies. How do we decide what skill to work on in snowboarding? We look through the lens of the competencies, right? Is this person centered? Are they mobile? No. Okay, we're going to work on position and balance. And then we can say, okay, can this person understand this set of familiar words? Or are they're able to interact in a certain way? Okay, we're going to put them into sort of this category, which will help us know what to work on. So the can-do statements are that we use to determine language level are the same as competencies, which we use to determine skills to work on and skill level in snowboarding. So there's so many parallels. It's really quite fun actually to dive into. And as you can tell, I'm passionate about it, language is snowboarding. It's really fun. And yeah, helping these folks get ready for their exams linguistically, as well as, confidence wise and all that stuff is definitely one thing that we want to do at Snowboard Teacher.
I was going to say, it seems it's not only just like verbally you're kind of getting across, but it's really helped just with the, it improves the type of communication in terms of body movement and how you really communicate. And of course, like you said, with the confidence aspect of that, that seems really interesting that way.
So check it out. Like in snowboarding, we've got in CASI methodology, we've got our 5 skills of snowboarding, right? We've got our position and balance, we've got our pressure, edging, timing, coordination, all that. In language learning, we've also got 4 skills, the language skills. We've got production skills, writing and speaking. We've got reception skills, what you can listen to, and interaction skills, having a conversation, and then mediation, which means how do the skills that are involved with managing a conversation, which is pretty important for a snowboard instructor, right? So it's kind of neat. We can go into these things. How do you lead a group? How do you manage interactions within a group? And the candidates go through that on their course and they deal with it in their job, right? So there's all these interesting aspects of language that can be developed and that make a person, competent in a language as a whole. Same way as, all these snowboarding skills, position and balance and timing and all that, those all together make a snowboarder competent in their snowboarding. So it's really fun to draw the parallels between all these things.
It's so good. And any questions you want to ask them?
No, I think you just covered. I was going to ask some questions, but then you just covered it in all the basics of the languages. So
nice. I love it. Yeah, I want to ask then quickly with the Snowboard Teacher company itself, what's the future and what kind of plans do you have with it? I'm assuming you're going to hopefully, when you get your higher qualifications in CASI, you want to really kind of put that content with the Snowboard Teacher stuff anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, why Snowboard Teacher exists is to help snowboarders make a living through snowboarding, right? That is the goal. I've been blessed in my life through the decisions I've made to have made a career in snowboarding, and it's led to a beautiful life. And I want to help other people who are thinking about the career of snowboarding to have access to that life, to live that life, to support that life. So part of building these courses is giving people the tools to access this beautiful snow life. I want to, in the work flow, for next year, let's say, is to film and put out Park 1 and Level 3 as soon as that's available, and then also to look at the French courses as well, because CASI delivers our courses in a variety of languages now, and there's a lot of French candidates as well, and so that would be really useful to them as well. So in the future, where this thing's going, I want to see the full suite of CASI courses in self-study programs and have a team of evaluators that are there to support students getting prepared for the next CASI course. So that's where I see this thing going. And I'm super excited to be working on it.
That's so good. Are you going to try and see the Snowboard Teacher kind of concept be a bit more international as well, or do you really want to keep it just consistently more in towards Canada in terms of those variations? So kind of what I'm asking is more of the idea of, there's a lot of CASI courses south of the hemisphere with the Asian culture specifically. Did you want to kind of touch upon having maybe Mandarin as like another language that might be interested in, or anything like that?
Totally. I mean, I want to follow in step with where CASI's going as well, right? And they're definitely starting to open up linguistically and becoming more worldwide. So, and I love that because we're building, this beautiful worldwide snow community, and I want to build an online community of snowboard professionals, spanning definitely outside of Canada and outside of the English language, and just build that support network so that we can all just support each other and make money with our snow boots on. That's the game. That's the goal.
And it'll make I'm sure it'll make the world like a bit more for the snowboard instructor side, just a bit more unified, because everyone can speak, or more people speak a different language, and then therefore communicate with other instructors from across the globe that don't know how to do English, and then making it a tighter community for all.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
And
no doubt. But I mean, just thinking linguistically too. One thing that's beautiful, I said this in the last part of my blog article there too, speaking switch, was to say that no matter what your first language is, everybody can understand a method.
yeah.
For sure.
I love that. So what have you got with the future of yourself then? Talk to me. Are you preparing for that level 4? And are you thinking of doing any kind of ISIA modules alongside that, like with avalanche safety training and whatnot? What's kind of going in for the future of Graham Sinclair?
Yeah, I mean, professionally wise, I would love to do that at some point. That level 4, I'm definitely ripe for it, and if the stars align, then I'll do it. And I'm waiting for those signs and for everything to come together for that. And future of Graham Sinclair, it's I can't be presumptuous enough to say that I'm going to control it. Where life brings me, it will want to. But what I can hope is that I'm going to be standing sideways, on a snowboard, on a surfboard, or on a skateboard. I still want to be involved with CASI, delivering courses, and I really, I'm still going to be running Snowboard Teacher and trying to grow this for our community of snowboarders.
Great. And final thoughts? What makes a good snowboard instructor in your opinion, mate? Like, what makes a great snowboard instructor? Yeah.
I love this, man. I listened to some of your other episodes and all those answers, man. We got people saying patience. We got people saying empathy and stoke. We got people saying you got to have a good skill level. You got to use metaphors to connect with people. And I agree with every single one of those things. To add to that, I'm really happy to see what CASI added to their evaluation forms this year. On the teaching skills side of things, you've got, guest service and safety. We've got technical content and communication, analysis and improvement, demonstrations. And one thing they added this year, which is brilliant, they put people skills and professionalism. And those two things, I agree with it. I wholeheartedly agree with that. People skills. As a snowboard instructor, you are the front line of a service industry. You're in contact with different people throughout the entire season. You might have one student for 3 weeks. You might have one student for 3 hours, but you are in contact with that person. And people skills, knowing how to listen, knowing how to slow down, how to be present, how to listen to their goals, help them reach that, listen to their fears, and knowing how to be basically a good human and a good communicator, a person who's good in relationships is absolutely fundamental. And then the professionalism part of it, you got to have the knowledge and the skills to back up, why these people hired you. They paid money for you for that day. You got to give them the goods. I mean, they paid for a service. You got to give it to them. So those two things, people skills and professionalism, I couldn't agree more that those two things globally, are key for making a great snowboard instructor.
Solid answer, Graham. I love it. Yeah. So where can we find you in terms of snowboard coach? Where can people contact you? Via social media and different websites?
Yeah, man. easiest place is on snowboardteacher.com. And otherwise, you can find me on Instagram at snowboard_teacher and my Facebook, snowboardteacher.com. Nice and easy. So I'm looking forward to connecting with this global snowboard community, man.
Nice. Any more blog posts in the works?
Oh, I got ideas. Oh man, I got ideas.
Can you give us like a sneak peek on a title or anything?
I think you're gonna have to wait with the rest of the world, my
That's
friend.
That's all right.
It'll be coming out. We'll post it when it's ready.
Great. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for the invitation. Kudos. Way to go, you guys. Nice day.